There was a moment in my life I will never forget. I saw a man sitting alone on a wooden bench outside a small workshop. His hands were rough, his eyes were tired, and yet there was something in him that felt unfinished, like a story that never got written properly. I asked him, "What do you do?" He looked at me and said something I still hear in my mind years later. "I used to do many things, but I never mastered anything." Let me tell you something. That sentence carries more weight than most people realize. Because here's what most people don't understand. Life does not reward scattered effort. Life does not reward almost. Life does not reward the person who tries everything, but becomes nothing deeply. Life rewards mastery. And mastery does not come from doing many things. It comes from doing one thing with such depth, such discipline, such obsession, such consistency that the world cannot ignore you anymore. Think about this for a moment. Most people are not poor because they lack opportunity. Most people are poor because they lack focus. They are jumping from skill to skill, from idea to idea, from dream to dream, like a leaf in the wind, never staying long enough in one place to grow roots. I learned something years ago, and it changed the way I look at success completely. A man becomes valuable in the marketplace not by how many things he knows, but by how deeply he knows one thing. Let that sink in. Because in a world where everyone is trying to learn everything, the person who chooses one craft and goes all in becomes rare, and rarity creates value. Let me tell you something deeper. There was a young man I once observed, always ambitious, always excited, always starting something new. One month he was learning graphic design. The next month, trading. Then coding. Then video editing. Then digital marketing. His enthusiasm was not the problem. His direction was. Because enthusiasm without focus becomes exhaustion. And he would always say, "I just want to be successful." But I asked him one question. How can you become successful at everything when you haven't stayed long enough to become excellent at anything? Silence, because silence is what truth sounds like when it finally lands. Here's what most people don't realize. Skill is not built in motivation. Skill is built in repetition. Skill is built in boredom. Skill is built in the days when nothing feels exciting anymore, but you still show up. That is where greatness is formed, not in inspiration, but in repetition. Think about a master musician. He did not become great because he practiced when he felt like it. He became great because he practiced when he didn't feel like it, when his fingers hurt, when no one was watching, when progress was invisible. That invisible phase is where most people quit. And that is why most people remain average. I want you to understand something very clearly. Your life is not shaped by what you start. Your life is shaped by what you continue. Continuity is everything. Let me ask you something honestly. How many things have you started in your life that you never finished? A course you didn't complete, a skill you abandoned, a habit you broke, a dream you postponed. And slowly, without noticing, your identity began to change, not into a master, but into a starter. And the world does not pay starters. The world pays specialists. Think about a surgeon. Nobody wants a surgeon who knows a little bit of everything. People want the one who has done the same operation 1,000 times. Think about a pilot. Nobody wants a pilot who kind of understands flying. They want the one who has trained for years in the same system. Why? Because repetition creates reliability. And reliability creates trust. And trust creates value. Let me tell you something painful but honest. Regret does not come from failure. Regret comes from unfinished potential. The things you never stayed long enough to become good at, those are the things that haunt people later in life, not the things they tried and failed. But the things they abandoned just before they were about to break through, think about this deeply. Most people quit right before the compound effect begins. And the compound effect is invisible at first. It feels like nothing is happening. Day after day, effort after effort, repetition after repetition, and still no visible reward. That is the test. Not talent, not intelligence, but patience and discipline. I once met an old craftsman who made wooden furniture. His hands moved slowly but with precision. Every cut, every polish, every measurement was exact. I asked him, How long did it take you to become this good? He smiled and said, I didn't become this good. I just stopped quitting. That line, I just stopped quitting. It carries a truth most people never accept, because skill acquisition is not about intensity. It is about duration. Let me say it again so it goes deeper. It is not about how hard you work for a week. It is about how consistently you work for years. Here's what happens in life. Most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can become in 5 years of focused repetition. So they jump, they switch, they restart. And every restart resets the progress. Think about that. Every time you quit and restart, you are not starting from zero skill. You are starting from zero momentum. And momentum is everything. I want you to imagine something. If you take one skill, just one, and you give it 365 days of consistent, intentional practice, you will not recognize yourself at the end of that year. But most people don't do that. They give 30 days here, 20 days there, 10 days somewhere else, and then they wonder why nothing changes. Here's the truth. Your life is simply a reflection of what you practice daily, not what you wish, not what you hope, not what you intend, but what you repeat. Think about the people who changed their lives completely. The person who learned coding and went from broke to employed. The person who learned sales and went from invisible to influential. The person who learned communication and went from ignored to respected. It was never magic. It was repetition. It was discipline. It was staying in one lane long enough for mastery to emerge. Let me go deeper with you. There is a psychological war happening inside every human being. One voice says, this is hard. Try something easier. And another voice says, stay. This is where growth is happening. Most people listen to comfort. Very few people listen to growth. And comfort always sounds reasonable. It says things like, maybe this isn't for you. It says, you're not progressing fast enough. It says, others are doing better than you. And slowly, without realizing it, people abandon their future in exchange for temporary emotional relief. But here's the truth. Everything valuable in life lives on the other side of discomfort. Skill acquisition is not a talent game. It is a tolerance game. How much frustration can you tolerate before you quit? How much boredom can you handle before you move on? How much delay in reward can you endure before you give up? Because the ones who win are not always the smartest. They are the ones who stay. I want you to think about something very practical. If you choose one craft today, one skill, and you decide, I will not abandon this for 12 months, something begins to change in your identity. You stop being a wanderer. You become a builder. You start thinking differently. You start noticing details others ignore. You start seeing patterns others miss. Because depth changes perception. And perception changes destiny. Let me tell you something I've seen repeatedly in life. The moment someone commits to one skill deeply, the world starts opening doors that were never visible before. Not because the world changed, but because they changed. Because mastery doesn't just improve ability, it transforms identity. Think about this. When you become good at something, you don't just earn money from it. You earn respect, you earn confidence, you earn clarity, you earn direction. And slowly, your life stops feeling like confusion and starts feeling like structure. But it begins with a decision, one skill. 1 year, no switching, no escaping, no restarting, just deep commitment. And I know what most people struggle with. They don't struggle with starting. They struggle with staying. Because staying feels like slow progress. But here's what I want you to understand at the deepest level. Slow progress that compounds is infinitely more powerful than fast progress that disappears. Let me tell you a story. There was a young man who decided to learn a single skill, writing. Not 10 skills, not multiple hustles, just writing. At first, nothing happened. No attention, no money, no recognition. But he kept going, 1 article a day, even when no one read them, even when it felt pointless, even when his friends laughed. And something strange began to happen. His thinking improved. His communication improved. His clarity improved. And after months, people started noticing. After years, opportunities came, not because he chased them, but because he became undeniable. That is what happens when you stay long enough. You stop chasing value and you become value. Think about that shift. Most people spend their life trying to get opportunities. Masters spend their life becoming the kind of person opportunities cannot ignore. And that transformation only happens through depth, through repetition, through focus, through discipline when nobody is clapping. And I want to say this carefully. There will be days when you feel like quitting. There will be days when you feel like you are wasting time. There will be days when you feel like others are moving faster. But those days are not signs to stop. They are tests to continue. Because every skill worth having will test your identity before it rewards your effort. It will ask you, are you someone who quits when it gets boring? Or are you someone who stays until mastery is born? And your answer is your future. Let me tell you something I've observed deeply about human nature. People don't fail because they are incapable. People fail because they are inconsistent. And inconsistency is just another form of quitting in disguise. 1 day on, 3 days off, 2 weeks motivated, 1 month lost. That is not progress. That is drift. And drift does not lead to destiny. It leads to regret. So when I say master one craft every year, I am not talking about productivity. I am talking about identity transformation. Because the person who can commit deeply to one skill for 1 year is the same person who can commit deeply to a relationship, to a business, to a purpose, to a life path. And suddenly, everything changes, not because life becomes easier, but because you become stronger in staying than in starting. And I want you to feel the weight of what I'm about to say. Most people underestimate how powerful they would become if they simply stopped abandoning themselves. Because every time you quit something you once promised yourself you would master, you don't just lose progress. You lose trust in yourself. And that loss is invisible. Nobody claps for it. Nobody notices it. But inside you, something starts to weaken. Let me tell you something deeply personal about human psychology. Confidence is not built by success. Confidence is built by evidence. Evidence that you do what you say you will do. Evidence that you stay when it gets hard. Evidence that you continue when there is no reward yet. And when that evidence accumulates, something powerful happens inside a person. They stop negotiating with excuses. They stop debating with doubt. They stop waiting for motivation because they already know who they are. Think about this for a moment. When a man or woman has practiced one skill for years, there is a quiet certainty in them, not arrogance, not noise, but certainty. The kind of certainty that says, I have been here before. I know what to do. And that certainty only comes from repetition. Here's what most people don't understand. Your brain does not reward intention. Your brain rewards repetition. That's why the first time you do something, it feels hard. The 10th time, it feels familiar. The 100th time, it starts to feel like part of you. And the 1000th time, you no longer think about it. You simply become it. That is mastery. But here is where the real battle begins. Because right before something becomes natural, it feels unbearable. Right before competence, there is confusion. Right before flow, there is frustration. Right before identity change, there is doubt. And most people quit in that exact space, not at the beginning, not at the end. But right in the middle where transformation is quietly forming, let me tell you a story. There was a young man who decided to learn public speaking. The first time he stood in front of people, his voice shook. His hands were cold. His thoughts disappeared. He finished the speech and felt embarrassed. He went home and said, maybe I'm not meant for this. But something inside him refused to accept that conclusion. So he did it again. And again and again. No applause, no recognition, just repetition. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. And something started to change. Not just his speaking, his presence, his confidence, his identity. Because When you repeat a skill long enough, you don't just learn the skill, you rewire the person. And I want you to understand something very important here. Most people are trying to change their results without changing their identity, but results are only a reflection. Identity is the source. So if you want different results, you don't just need new information. You need new repetition, new habits, new discipline, new daily standards. Let me ask you something honestly. What are you repeating every day right now? Because whatever you are repeating is shaping you more than anything you say you want. If you repeat distraction, you become scattered. If you repeat excuses, you become inconsistent. If you repeat avoidance, you become stuck. But if you repeat focus, you become sharp. If you repeat discipline, you become powerful. If you repeat learning, you become dangerous in the best possible way. Think about this. Every expert you admire was once a beginner who refused to quit. There was nothing special in the beginning. Only repetition. Only patience. Only persistence through embarrassment, confusion, and failure. And yet most people still believe there is a shortcut. They believe there is a secret moment where everything suddenly clicks without the years of discipline behind it. But let me be honest with you. There is no shortcut to identity change. There is only repetition until identity shifts. And I want to take you deeper into something most people never think about. Pain is not your enemy. Avoidance is, because pain during growth is temporary. But pain from regret lasts a lifetime. Think about the people you know who are older now, the ones who say things like, I wish I had learned this earlier. I wish I had stayed consistent. I wish I had not given up so quickly. That pain is not from failure. That pain is from unfinished potential. And unfinished potential is one of the heaviest burdens a human being can carry because they can see clearly what they could have become. But they can also see clearly what they chose instead. Comfort, distraction. Easy exits. Let me tell you something that might shift your entire perspective. The difference between the person you are today and the person you could become in 5 years is not talent. It is repetition of a single focused skill. 5 years of scattered effort produces confusion. 5 years of focused effort produces mastery. And mastery changes everything. It changes how people see you. It changes how you see yourself. It changes what opportunities are even available to you. Because the world does not respond to desire. The world responds to capability. And capability is built slowly, quickly, daily, without recognition, without applause. Think about a craftsman shaping wood, one cut at a time, one polish at a time, one adjustment at a time. Nobody sees the thousands of small movements. But over time, a masterpiece appears. And that is exactly how human skill is built. But here is where I want to challenge you deeply. Most people are not lacking opportunity. They are lacking depth. They have touched too many things, but mastered nothing. They have started too many paths, but walked none fully. And because of that, their life feels unstable. Not because life is unfair, but because their focus is divided. Let me tell you something that changed my understanding of success. A scattered mind produces scattered results. A focused mind produces inevitable results. And focus is not a talent. It is a decision repeated daily. Even when you are tired, even when you are bored, even when you are uncertain. Especially when you are uncertain, because uncertainty is where most people abandon their discipline. But the ones who succeed, they stay inside the uncertainty long enough for clarity to be born. And clarity always comes after consistency. Never before it, never without it. Let me go deeper with you. There is a silent moment in every journey of skill acquisition. A moment where nothing feels exciting anymore. You are no longer a beginner, but not yet advanced. You are in between invisible progress. No validation, no applause, just repetition. And this is the moment that defines everything. Because in that space, you either evolve or you exit. And most people exit. Not because they are weak, but because they mistake slow growth for no growth. They cannot see what is happening beneath the surface. but everything is happening beneath the surface. Your thinking is changing. Your reactions are changing. Your discipline is forming. Your identity is shifting. But it is quiet, too quiet for most people to trust it. So they quit and restart and quit again and restart again, and they call it trying. But it is not trying. It is escaping. And escape never builds anything meaningful. So let me ask you something that requires honesty. How many times have you been right at the edge of breakthrough and still walked away? Because I want you to understand something deeply. The difference between where you are and where you want to be is often just a few more weeks of discipline, a few more months of repetition, a few more moments of staying when everything inside you says leave. And I want to take you even deeper into this truth, because there is a version of you that only appears after enough repetition. A version of you that thinks differently, speaks differently, moves differently, earns differently, lives differently, but that version is not found. It is built. And it is built slowly through days that feel ordinary, through effort that feels invisible, through discipline that feels unrewarded. And I want to stay right here with this idea because most people miss it completely. Ordinary days are not wasted days. They are construction days. And if you can learn to respect ordinary days, you will eventually live an extraordinary life. But only if you keep going, and I want you to hear me clearly now, not as motivation, not as inspiration, but as a reminder of something you already know deep inside you. Your life will not change in a dramatic moment. It will not change when everything becomes perfect. It will not change when you finally feel ready. It will change in a small decision repeated consistently when nobody is watching. That is where destinies are rewritten. Not in the spotlight, but in silence. Not in applause, but in discipline. Not in emotion, but in repetition. Let me tell you something you may not want to hear, but you need to understand one day you will look back at your life, and in that moment, nothing will matter more than the choices you are making right now. Not your excuses, not your intentions, not your potential. Only your actions. And you will either feel the peace of knowing you stayed committed or the weight of knowing you walked away too early. And that feeling, that deep internal truth cannot be escaped because time does not ask for permission. Time only reveals what you truly did with it. Think about this. Every master you admire, every successful person you respect, every individual who transformed their life from ordinary to extraordinary, they were not different from you in the beginning. They felt doubt. They felt fear. They felt confusion. They felt like quitting. But they made one decision that changed everything. They stayed. When it was boring, they stayed. When it was slow, they stayed. When nobody believed in them, they stayed. And that staying became their power. So I want to ask you something deeply personal. What if the only thing standing between you and a completely different life is your willingness to not quit this time? What if everything you have been searching for, confidence, success, clarity, respect, financial freedom, self-respect, what if it is all waiting on the other side of consistency? Not talent, not luck, not timing, just consistency, just repetition, just discipline when it gets uncomfortable. Because here is the truth that life eventually teaches everyone. You do not rise to the level of your dreams. You fall to the level of your habits. And your habits are either building your future or quietly destroying it. There is no neutral ground. Every single day you are becoming someone, either someone stronger or someone weaker, either someone focused or someone distracted, either someone disciplined or someone dependent on motivation that never stays long enough. And one day, that accumulation becomes your life. So I want you to feel this deeply right now, not as pressure, but as awareness. You are not stuck. You are not behind. You are not incapable. But you are responsible. And responsibility is the moment everything changes. Because the moment you stop blaming circumstances, you become powerful enough to change them. The moment you stop waiting, you start building, The moment you stop restarting your life every few weeks and instead continue one path long enough to master it, everything begins to shift. And maybe right now, you are standing at that exact moment where your old habits are pulling you back and your future is quietly calling you forward. And you can feel both directions inside you. One is familiar. One is uncertain. One is comfortable. One is powerful. And your entire future will be decided by which voice you obey. So hear me in this final moment, not as encouragement, but as truth that you cannot ignore anymore. Your next level of life is not hiding in another idea. It is not hiding in another opportunity. It is not hiding in another restart. It is hiding in your ability to stay consistent when it stops feeling exciting. That is the secret. That is the separation. That is the line between who you are and who you could become. And one day, maybe years from now, you will either thank yourself for not quitting, or you will sit in silence, wondering what your life would have looked like if you had just stayed a little longer. So don't make that version of you wait in regret. Don't let potential become memory. Don't let dreams become stories you tell with a heavy heart, because this moment, this very moment, is still in your hands and everything can still change. But only if you move, only if you commit, only if you decide right now that your future is worth more than your comfort. So take this seriously, not emotionally, but personally, because what you do after hearing this is already becoming your destiny. And I want your destiny to be something you are proud of, something you built deliberately, something you earned through discipline, something you didn't just wish for, but something you became through repetition. And maybe one day, when you look back at this exact moment, you will realize this is where everything finally began